Hello, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today, we're going to do a Tonalist watercolor landscape painting, and I believe this one is going to focus on just a tube of sepia. I've been on a sepia kick, just playing with the Bombay ink sepia, mixing one with fountain pen inks, etc. So this one, the Van Gogh, is PBK 7, so a black, and PR 101. I believe that's either light red oxide or your burnt sienna. So you can mix the sepia from a brown, probably an orangey brown, and a black, or at least this brand's sepia. I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. I covered it with water. It's cold press, and I'm going to go back and forth in the style of the Tonalist, Stuart Davies, Dennis Sheehan, where I'm going to apply my pigment and kind of wipe back and forth and create my scene. I think this will be a more minimalist landscape, but we'll see what happens. If it was to be matted, it'd be matted 11 by 14. It would come to about here, but I like to paint to the edges of a paper. Kind of just really helps get everything situated. Let's put some strokes in the sky and use the paper towel to tone it up. So think of the paper towel as an eraser, as a texture device, as a way to pull moisture off of the paper. And then think of the hake as a way to add back and add moisture back. So play around, dab, and have fun. If you watch Stuart Davies, Dennis Sheehan, they will mix their colors, and usually like Stuart Davies is using a sap green and a red ochre. I did pick up those two colors, or something close to those, in acrylics to play around with that in a future video. But so he'll take oil, mix those, and he'll thin them down and really coat his paper and let the scene, or his canvas, and really coat it and let it create itself. I don't recall the drying shift that takes place with this particular tube of paint, but that's something that we're going to have to prepare for. Even though it's going in dark now, whenever it dries, it'll soften up. Especially if it has the PBK, the black 7 in there. I'm not sure if that's the ivory black or the lamp black. One of the blacks is made from carbon soot, and the other is from burnt bone, I believe. The Bombay ink that I have, I picked up a second bottle of that. I went to Lafayette yesterday and saw they had some in stock, and the price was reasonable. It's just I've been enjoying it, and it's only 1 ounce in the bottle, and I feel like I'm going through it pretty quick. So, but I kind of have a thing where I need to have the backup at times. Then from there, I did order a bottle off of Amazon of the Dale Rowney the acrylic inks, and I got one in Sepia as well, and that would just allow me to play and compare, because these earth tones vary from company to company. I had picked up the calligraphy ink in New Orleans. I had talked about that in a recent video from Papier Plume, where they had their house brand calligraphy ink. Their sepia is very nice, on the lighter side of things. I have noticed some places have just a sepia that's more just brown, and others that this one's on the warmer side, and I think that's because of the PR 101, which is just a warm rust color. But the P.H. Martin's was a little bit more greener, almost kind of a little umberish. My fountain pen one that I mixed, I used Noodler's Polar Brown and Noodler's Black. Both of them are of the bulletproof series, so they say they're safe to mix together. You got to be careful mixing fountain pen inks. I think that like sediment can take place, so they can kind of essentially freeze up a pen. Because with the Noodlers, they have a whole series called Bay State, which I don't think is pH neutral, and those cause issues if you mix them with others. But if you're looking into mixing pre-existing inks, fountain pens, check out just the Fountain Pen forum, Fountain Pen Network on online. There's a whole bunch of articles about that. What brands mix well, what don't, how you can go about safely mixing them for yourself so you're not destroying your pens, etc. This back and forth technique is so relaxing and so meditative. I highly recommend, if you're a watercolor painter, to at least give it a go. I'd recommend using a more student brand paint like this, just because of the quantity of pigment that you'll use. But I've done this with Daniel Smith paints before and really enjoyed it. It lets you explore the value range of a tube paint to give you an idea of what it's possible of. It also just lets you create, kind of like how, let's see, I want to bring something up here. People do like the free-form writing, or they'll just start writing and then whatever comes to mind, they'll just write. I'm not sure if the word's cathartic, where it's healing in a way. And if empty paper or canvas frightens you and you're not sure what to do, it's just great to explore. This is the number 1. This is Silver Black Velvet. Just using it for quick lines in these spots. In a few, we'll do a dry off, and we'll see the softening that happens. Now, with these, if you push for about 25 minutes to 30 minutes wet and wet, maybe all the way up to 40, you're going to have less of a drying shift taking place. What happens is that the water as it gets removed from the paper, it makes the paint appear more lighter in value and softer. And this is something to keep in mind whenever you're painting and you're trying to get values exactly the way you want, and then it dries and it's softer than where you want it to be at. This is just a way for you to learn the different pigments. There. You could kind of slap it with the paper towel just to get some textures. You can use your different scraping tools. Here's a scraping tool that was made for me by a Mr. Mark. He has some finished, so we'll see if we can get some to give out to people. He had a cool experiment where you replace the handle of a Ron Ranson Hake brush with this material to have a scraping tool and the brush in one. Also just seeing the moisture level of the paper. All right, I'm going to pause the camera. We'll do a dry off. All right, so you can see how much this lightened, and in fact, there was a shift from warmth to a kind of a cooler color with it. The black pigment is definitely prevalent, and in some areas you can see the splotchiness of it. I've talked about how for me when I use the black in watercolor, it does have a tendency to splotch in some areas depending on the application. We had just done that for, I think, 12 minutes. So I had said earlier, if you push it for a longer time period, you won't see as much of a tonal shift. That's because the water is being removed as you're painting. It's just kind of naturally drying, and you can have a bigger buildup of your pigment as you go along. So you can keep that there, but with the YouTube videos, it does seem like there's a time frame, time limit that people want me to be within. So there is that. So play around, explore that one, see what you can get in 5 minutes. If you look at David Usher and Stephen Cronin with their watercolor painting, they will wet their paper, feed in raw sienna, Payne's gray, maybe a mixture with alizarin crimson, using some of the Ron Ranson palette, and then dry off pretty quickly after that, and use that to unify the painting. If you look at Mind of Watercolor, he has a few videos called Spontaneous Watercolor Painting, where he'll wet the paper, feed pigment in, let it slosh around, and then dry from there, and then play from there. So, or you could look back on some of my videos where I stay wet and wet completely. I probably have them titled Staying in the Wet and Wet stage, where it's up to 40 minutes long. So that's kind of the thing that you'll have to learn over time, and it's a lot of fun experiments, seeing what your pigments do, what your palette does as time progresses. Now, other things to keep in mind is with this kind of stage here, when we're not wet and wet anymore, it's very easy to put in the same tone. And here I'm just trying to utilize texture in order to add interest in those areas rather than just blocking in the masses. For me personally, you'll hear in books, or artists will say, to not put too much interesting stuff in the foreground because you lose the viewer's eye in the foreground. They kind of stop there and they don't go further. But if you look at Hudson River Valley painters and others, you'll see a lot of texture and a lot of things going on in the foreground, but I think they're very close tonally, very close in value, and that's how the artist prevents the eye from just sitting in the foreground. If we were to reflect back on Burge Harrison, 1909 writer, and I think Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting discussed it, and I think it just shows up a lot where even Mad Charcoal had talked about it, within shadows and outside edges having less detail so that the eye doesn't sit there, and that's just kind of mimicking the way the eye views things. And then if we want to draw it just to tonalism, you're kind of closer together value-wise. So just this application alone just kind of helps with that. And the fact that we're monochromatic, the monochromatic doesn't make a tonalist, but color, palette choices, application, and just mood will often go towards that. I'm debating if I even want to put anything in this background texture-wise or just kind of stay here. But you can really have a lot of fun with it. And one thing to point out is with watercolor, the paper can get a little pricey, but I encourage you to practice as much as possible. I've just been exploring so many different mediums lately that I haven't really done a proper watercolor painting. I think yesterday or 2 days ago was a pen experiment with the cows, and then washing over it with watercolor. But I've been playing around with that cow composition in every single medium. I picked up a thin brass plate and a thin tin plate from Hobby Lobby. They were about $4 each. I coated them with the India ink left over from, actually, I think it might have been from the cow sketch. And the goal is to etch those and do dry point etching. That might be one of my last studies of that cow composition. I may do it in oil. I think I mentioned that I did pick up some acrylic paints. They didn't have exactly sap green, so I got some sort of green. and a red oxide. So that palette is going to get explored in acrylic. I should refer to that palette as the Tonalist palette, as Stuart Davies and Dennis Sheehan, like the starting point for them. When you mix them, you get a brown, and then you get the green and you get the red aspects. Though, even though I don't use acrylics that much, I find that acrylics don't mix well. I think that's why I stayed away from them. So I had done oils, got acrylics in college just to try it when I visited my parents down in Louisiana. And I was like, oh, this is very vibrant. It didn't give me the muted muddiness that I like from mixing everything. But that's just me and my painting style. So we'll see how minimalist palettes work in acrylic in a few days once I start playing with those. I did pick up a raw umber, burnt umber combination in acrylic. I think that'll be fun. And I've been doing the still life oyster experiments in watercolor, which my friends are enjoying, and that's to decorate their outdoor kitchen. Other people have expressed interest, or at least enjoyed those oysters, so I'll do more of those. And then if there's ever anything you like, I have the Etsy shop down below. Oh, actually, that's great for me to say, hey guys, if you want to support this channel, I have links down below, and I have the Patreon exclusive content. Thank you to everybody that supports me on the Patreon. It really helps me out. I'm actually going to start a series on there, going through some artwork of a local artist that I had picked up. And the artist is unfortunately deceased, and I want to start kind of talking about his artwork and getting it out there more so that more people know about him. So there's that. And I have Etsy if you ever want to purchase some of my artwork. And of course, liking and subscribing really helps out. I'm just kind of looking at this little path right here. Let's do our last dry off. I think we'll pretty much be done at this point. 22 minutes. All right. One thing I forgot to mention is that you are always welcome to follow along with any one of my tutorials. And you always have my express permission to sign your own name and to sell anything you do whenever you follow along with one of my tutorials. I want you guys to be successful. I want you guys to have fun, and I want you guys to feel positive about your artwork. I also had put up a post, I think I put it on Patreon, that you'll get to a point where you have a lot of art and you'll start developing your own style. You'll start having a lot of different things going on. And one thing we can do as artists is donate our art to charity fundraisers. Yesterday there was one for the family of a local woman who unfortunately did not survive the battle with cancer. And the money from that charity auction went to help the family, help the funeral expenses, etc. So I donated the painting, and that's the way you can kind of give back to the community and help the community, where you can create something and then put it out there, and that thing that you can create can really help other people. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.